Without further ado, good afternoon, brother. I definitely appreciate
Greetings.
you, taking the time out to talk to me. And, I'm not going to introduce you. I'll let you introduce yourself. So if you could tell me your name, where you're from, and what you do, we can get it rolling.
So my name is Ivan. I'm from New Orleans,
Cool.
and I am an IT support person. I guess IT gets real complicated, but we could leave it there, or we could dive a little further.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us to, take that dive just because, your version of it can be different than the next person, can be different from the next
Right.
person. So I'm really interested in really hearing about your version of it. So just explain what that means to you. Like, I don't know Ivan. I don't know what Ivan does. Like,
Yeah.
explain to me what you do, Ivan.
So let me give you a little background. So I'm in IT support or in the IT department. And what I do is basically at this current stage, I work at a bank. So I provide support to the business banking side of things.
Okay.
And they have these applications and these web interfaces that they use to manage these account and relationships with businesses that conduct business with them via banking.
Okay.
So what I would do is I basically am their technical like right hand person as it relates to those applications. So if there's maintenance that needs to be performed, all of this stuff is formed out for the most part. We have some in-house things. Then I jump on the phone with support, or I jump on the phone with our technical contact at that company. I'm like, hey, this is the issue we're having. Can you look into it? So on and so forth. And if I need to translate, like, common speak to my IT counterparts, I also do that. So I may have to talk with another IT department about, okay, this is the issue that they're having. Can you guys look into this, so on and so forth. So it's just a support, customer support type of role, but um, less technical than I used to be, and more service oriented, like making sure that people are squared away and providing that kind of middleman. I middleman a lot of things. That's basically
Right.
what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's what it sounded like to me, and that's actually that's a good segue because that was going to be my next question in terms of just listening to you. Are you more like a liaison? Are you like people facing, or are you more so kind of dealing with like you said maybe external parties like IT departments that, or like if you're using applications like talking to those folks to sort of translate that to your sort of internal teams. Is that sort of
Yeah.
how it works?
It's a lot of relationship management, and I believe I was hired for the job because I was so personable. My previous supervisor said, I interviewed well. So I pride myself on treating people the way that I want to be treated when I have a problem. So that kind of lends itself very well to, okay, you're having an issue. I may not even be the person to help you with that issue, but I'll touch base with you to make sure that you're good. I'm on some like highly visible applications, one or two that senior management and leadership touches because of my soft skills, so to speak.
I got it. Yeah, it's interesting you say that just because I think when a lot of people hear, tech, IT support, different things like that, they aren't necessarily associating that with, having some of those, ancillary, soft skills, people skills, and different things like that. The only thing they think about are, people who are sitting by computers coding all day, or
Right.
trying to troubleshoot code and things of that nature. So that's really good to know. I appreciate you providing that context.
Yeah.
So
So in a situation, go ahead.
no. You go, bro. If you had something
So
else,
in a situation where, let's say, someone's stuff is not acting the way that it's supposed to act, and
mhm,
there's another team within my department who handles that, then they could, of course, go through the service desk to create a ticket and so on and so forth. But sometimes I will step in and say, hey, I'll pick up on that and follow up, so they don't have to spend their time kind of engaging with IT folks. Of course, there's some situations where they are the subject matter expert. So them explaining things is better than me, but sometimes I'll get involved just depending on what the situation kind of requires. So
I got it. No, that's cool, man. So you just a bridge, depending,
pretty much.
people utilize you, however. I get it, man. That's really cool. So no, all I was gonna say is, man, I just let's jump into it, brother. The path for Ivan. You graduate high school. From the time you graduate high school, in a short sort of condensed version, give me Ivan leaving high school to where Ivan is today as an IT support professional.
Very interesting story because one thing I didn't do is I didn't finish college.
Okay.
So I'm incredibly blessed. I'm a person of faith. I'm a Christian, and I believe that God worked things out for me very well. So I'm in New Orleans. I graduated from high school. I'm working at a law firm, trying to get into IT because that's a thing that I have a passion for. Long story, kind of medium. What happens is Hurricane Katrina transpires, and I end up evacuating and ended up in DC with a woman who I'm now married to.
Oh.
So I end up in DC. My initial plan to get into IT was, okay, I'm gonna start with Best Buy in the computer department. But in New Orleans, there wasn't one that was close. But in DC, that was a different kind of beast. There was a Best Buy right there in wherever it was. I can't think of it. Fancier part of town at the moment. It escapes me. Dang it! I wish I remembered. But I started working at Best Buy, and my wife at the time, she worked for the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. Contracting is big down there. So she was a contractor with like Perot Systems. So I ended up getting an interview with a guy, and the same thing that kind of transpired. I interviewed well because customer service was very important. That was a desk side support role. So I was basically, creating tickets, opening up, going up, helping people with, Internet Explorer, Mac OS. I can't print, so on and so forth. And I did a couple service desk jobs after that when we transitioned to Pittsburgh. And then I ended up doing what's called application support, which is kind of like what I'm doing now, but a lot more hands-on. So it was my customer service and my personal skills that lended itself very well to me being able to get these type of jobs because, IT, like you said earlier, is not just somebody sitting behind a computer, coding and stuff like that. There are many facets to it. There's security, there's, data, technical developer stuff. There's your frontline support people, and then there's your people who handle more advanced issues that require a little bit more skill and a little bit more time. I happen to be one of those people who was very good at the things that took a little bit more skill and a little bit more time because what I consider myself to be is I'm a problem solver by nature who just happens to love technology. So that's something that I lead with in a lot of my interviews. So I'm into solving problems. I just love tech. So they kind of like, it was a marriage that worked out very well for me. And the career just kept kind of getting better as you change jobs. You have unfortunate circumstances where you get let go because of the economy or downsizing. And just the next step up was just another job with a little bit more capability, a little bit more responsibility. So that's how I got where I am now.
Great, man. That's a really interesting story, man. Is especially understanding some of the just sort of natural sort of life things that happen. I mean, who could have anticipated, the hurricane and how, someone who lived through that, how much that impacted their life personally and professionally to kind of steer you on the course to where you are today. So I appreciate you sharing, that story with us. Yeah, man, that's deep. That's dope. So I'm not going to ask you how much you make.
Thank you.
But, for people who are curious, what in these sorts of roles, what could be their sort of expectation of, salary ranges, just like generally speaking?
That's an interesting question because, there's a connection between DC and Pittsburgh. We lived in DC for a couple of years. And when a lot of the family was moving back to Pittsburgh, I'm not from Pittsburgh, my wife is. The cost of living was a lot cheaper in Pittsburgh, but the pay ranges were very comparative to what we were making down in DC. So in IT, I guess I haven't looked into, kind of like the entry level stuff in a while, but I would say, you could probably expect to make, as it relates to the non-specialized skills, if you're a developer and you're really talented in that area, you definitely can make, 6 figures or a little bit less or a little bit more. But on the support side, I would say you're looking at 40 low end, 60 high end. a year, and that could kind of fluctuate just depending. Now, again, these ranges are very like old, so
Right,
I
right,
don't know
gotcha.
what stuff looks like now, but that's
Gotcha.
kind of like 25 bucks an hour, 50 grand a year. It's kind of how that kind of equates out, I believe.
No, that's helpful. No, that's exactly what I was looking for. So, I appreciate that. And like, I know that, those, like you said, those things vary depending on what type of support you're supplying, the firm, different things like that. So I know there's a lot of things that sort of go into that in terms of being able to sort of to generate that range. But thank you. So for you, let's get back to Ivan.
Mhm.
Let's talk about career trajectory. I'm just curious about some of your professional goals and this role that you are in today. Where do you see this role sort of taking you? Like, what are your next steps, or what's at the top of the mountain for Ivan?
Interesting question. I would say something that lends itself very well to my personality, me being kind of like even keel, cool, calm under pressure. I have always been eyeing kind of leadership. I'm not reevaluating that at the moment, but I just wonder if that's going to be the thing because it. I've always found myself in a position of helping my colleagues to become better support personnel in terms of the problem solving and maybe even some of the soft skills that are required to talk to, let's say, a difficult customer or something like that. Like I find myself kind of thriving on having those hard conversations because I'm relatively chill. So I would I think I would blend it. I would kind of want to be in leadership. Kind of, if you had something that was too difficult for you to deal with, then I could kind of deal with that. But I don't know because, man, the higher you get in your profession, it seems like the more meetings you get pulled into, and the less actual work you do, and the
Right,
less
right, right.
actual like satisfying, gratifying stuff you get into. So I don't know. It's like you sacrifice, you sacrifice the gratification for helping other people get that gratification. There's also some interest in, business BAs, basically people who look at your situation and see your problem and try to figure out what's a solution for that problem. A business analyst is what that stands for the listeners. That is something that I could see kind of happening as well. But I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know what the top of the hill is for me. That's
Okay.
an interesting question, but that's kind of where I see myself going. It's either into leadership or more personal support. Let me help you do what you need to do it faster, do it better, do it more efficiently, so on and so forth. So I could kind of see myself going that route.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, just to to speak on that just briefly. Yeah, it's interesting you say that just because leadership does sort of pull you into meetings because you start to get into like strategy and different things like that, opposed to what you're saying where you're sort of more hands on with maybe the people you manage in terms of helping them strengthen their skills to become better support specialists or different things like that. So there's a medium, but I'm with you. I mean, I'm a person who's in, in a leadership position myself. I know that, I will say a good portion of my day is consumed with meetings, but these are meetings that are, strategizing, trying to create overall sort of plans and just simple strategy just for the department, for the team, and different things like that.
Yeah.
But there's definitely levels and there's variations. So it's just interesting. I just just thinking about it, like we meet a lot. Like a lot of my days is just meeting with folks and talking about things and programs and stuff like that. And it's not as hands on as you would think. But I guess it's like you think about like you said, business analyst and maybe a supervisor and then maybe the man. Like I don't know. But yeah, I got it. Thank you for that.
Because as you grow and you flex your support service, solution muscle, you become hopefully more adept at doing those things. So then people kind of want you to be a part of the, like you said, the strategy,
Right.
and they want your input, and
Right.
you have that experience. So it's just like you gain a new set of skills basically. So it's all good. It's all good
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I mean, you gain a new set. It takes you over here, but sometimes it does kind of take away from that sort of like one on one. kind of, working with folks to help build. But, hopefully, during your path and during your journey, you'll find a medium, to get,
Yeah.
all those things. So I'm definitely, rooting for you in that regard.
Thank you, sir.
I got a really interesting question for you. I know you said a lot of these questions have been interesting, but this question specifically, I think, is important. So, who you are, Ivan, Black man, person of color in this field. How do you think those factors do they? I can't say they necessarily do. How do you feel about those factors as it relates to your career, field, your position, different things like that?
That's a good question as well. It's interesting, right? Because I grew up in a mostly Black city, dealing with the things that mostly Black cities deal with, crime and, limited resources and so on and so forth. Uh, it's funny because when you have a certain level of polish, though, that lends itself well to being able to be in these rooms with these people who live their lives a certain sort of way. I find myself very often, I don't pay attention to it as much, but very often I'm the only Black face in the room or on the call. But I haven't been in the workforce for as long as I've been in the workforce. I guess I don't pay attention to it as much, but I'm certainly aware of it. I don't know what kind of role it plays. I mean, it has just to be candid, it has its benefits in some ways because you're not just like everybody else. You bring a more diverse point of view to anything that you bring, and it also leads you out of some conversations sometimes because you don't get the cultural references, and sometimes they're our Caucasian brothers and sisters. If you happen to work with a lot of them, their reference points and their things that they find funny is a little different. But from a job perspective, it's okay, I suppose, man. I think about the aspect of socializing, which is an interesting one because not only am I a Black male in these workforce situations, in these environments, but I'm also an introvert, right? So I'm not prone to socializing anyway. So I wonder what kind of impact that's going to have. Like we had I think they were planning like a golf outing recently. And I just don't want to go off GP. Two, I'm not really into golf. So it was just like, it's interesting to see how they pitch it to people who are already kind of more in tune with that as a point of interest. So they kind of like say, well, yeah, don't worry if you're not good at it. You know what I mean? We play it in a certain way that you'll be okay. And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm into that. I thought about going though, just because I like to push myself from time to time. But that's the only way it kind of plays a greater role, because in IT is not as social department anyway. Because again, you have those people who kind of have a certain particular set of skills that lends themselves to being kind of anti anyway. Like a lot of IT folks, and they don't have great personable skills, and they can be a little rough around the edges, and so on and so forth. So that's an interesting thing. I'm curious about what you follow up with that. That's a good question.
Well, I mean, I just want to just sort of create a baseline. Just it's important for folks to understand, like you said, diverse perspectives that you bring to your, bring to your team, bring to your job. It's important for folks to hear someone diverse and how, them being diverse, how that impacts, everything around them, whether it's in the office, outside the office, career path, trajectory, anything like that. So, I appreciate that perspective. It's really
one thing I will say is one thing about me is I have this certain level of polish, but I don't put on at work. You know what I mean? Like I guess I'm kind of in the middle either way, just in terms of like how I speak and how I carry myself, the type of dignity that I walk around with, and so on and so forth. But I find that some Black folks feel like they have to put on a certain kind of thing to be in these rooms, and I don't do that as a Black man. I am who I am, professional, polished, but I don't I don't I don't take it up a level in terms of to make myself be more whatever around non people of color. We could
Mm,
say that.
got it. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole another conversation about that, but I'll keep the party going, man. So I'm curious, would you encourage someone to get into this field and follow this path? And if so,
Absolutely.
okay, why is that?
Absolutely. Well, because things are changing. They've been changing for a while as it relates to the type of interest that young black or even older black folks are into. I mean, we're kind of finding ourselves not as handicapped as we were before. Like computers are not as inaccessible; they're way more accessible than they were before. So you find that a lot of these kids, these young people coming up, they already have some experiences that we didn't have growing up. Like I learned to type on a typewriter. I didn't even learn to type on a computer. So people of a certain age, coming into the internet, coming into certain things being available to you, it was like new and fresh, but now it's just a part of life. And I can't speak on, because at one time, coding was like the thing to do. And I don't know if we're still there, but I definitely would encourage people to figure out a way to be a part of solutions. But I mean, it's a service, right? IT is not it's not a driver of business in that it leads out from the front. You support the people typically who are contributing to the bottom line of the company. So it's a support position when we all get down to it. But you can make some decent money if you're into that. You're naturally inclined to be technical. Absolutely. We're not going backwards. We're only going forward in technology. So to be hands-on with that stuff is very important.
Right, right. That's good info. Good thing to know, man. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got, brother. You got any closing remarks? Anything that you would like to add, or anything that you would like to say that we didn't cover?
That's a good question. So, I mean, we've had these conversations about, as a society, not just me and you, the impact and the importance of college. That's an interesting one because there are certain roles in the IT world that don't necessarily require a certain level of technical prowess in terms of that paper, that degree. So it is accomplishable. I mean, we may have glossed over it pretty quickly, but I'm in IT with no college experience at all. As it relates to that, man, I just took a computer science class in high school. I did really good. It's one of the few classes I aced because it was my interest. I love that stuff. And then I went on to college to find out that computer science wasn't really what I wanted to be into because it had to do with the computer and how it calculated and performed certain actions. I'm really like how does technology improve our lives? How does technology move us forward, allow us to be more productive? So, I was able to just kind of, finesse an interest into a career, basically. And there could be some limitations that I have on my trajectory because I don't have a college degree. But, we'll cross that bridge when I get to it, I suppose.
Hey, man, that was excellent, man. That was the perfect way to, conclude this, man. Seriously. And I think that provides, very valuable sort of context, for anyone listening in terms of, how you've been able to sort of chart this path, without a degree, but then also, explaining that, in certain sort of, areas of this particular field, like, that might be a hurdle. I mean, you just don't know. So it's just it's probably just best for you to understand exactly what it is you're trying to do and just figure out what it is that's necessary in order for you to get there. So,
right.
Yeah, man, this was excellent. I definitely appreciate the time, brother. I wish you the best in all your endeavors, and yeah, man, we'll talk soon, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks
All
for
right, man.
All right,
Later.
here.